Oh, hello. Today we are talking about my favorite general fiction picks for 2021. Now, this includes books that I don't think slot neatly into a different category or genre list that I have going. It also includes sort of like classic literature, just general fiction that I wanted to include, but they didn't fit into one of my other genre lists. Now, I will tell you, I only have 8 of these this year. I normally have 10, and I thought about not doing this at all, but I actually did want to highlight these 8 books, so I don't know that this will be as long as some of my best of the year lists, but I figured I still wanted to make it, so hopefully you guys still want to watch it. So we'll start at number 8, work our way up to the top. Number 8 is Jamaica Inn from Daphne du Maurier. I always want to call her Rebecca du Maurier, but that is not her name. I did this as a buddy read with my friend Leanna and my friend Alan from the Library of Alexandria. And actually we did another buddy read that you will be seeing later on this list. I did not know what to expect from this book because the only Daphne du Maurier I had read previously before I read this was Rebecca. And I feel like this is pretty different from Rebecca in the sense of like what happens. Basically, this is like her pirate book, I guess is the way to describe this. I really was reminded of just what a master she is of creating sort of pulpy suspense vibe. This is very atmospheric, like the English Riviera, I guess is where you would describe this as being. But this is like very spooky vibes, but a different kind of spooky vibes than we get with Rebecca. So I just admire the fact that she's able to have something that feels kind of suspenseful and pulpy, but encased in really beautiful writing. Yeah, I don't know. This was not what I was expecting from a Daphne du Maurier, but I really enjoyed this. I think I like this better than Leanna or Alan did, but I think they still also enjoyed this. This was a nice return for me to Daphne du Maurier. Number 7 is Sister Song by Lucy Holland, and this is a book that I would not have read if it had not been for a recommendation from Jean at Jean Bookish Thoughts. I did a video vlog reading 4 of her recommendations that I got from her on TikTok, and I'm really glad she put this on my radar. I would not have, I was not aware of this book at all until she said something about it. But basically, this is a retelling of an English folk ballad. It's set right when the Romans have left Britain, and it is a really thought-provoking, it's very feminist basically, but it's also just interesting in terms of the way it is portraying relationships between sisters, because there are 3 siblings at the heart of this. I think this also has some interesting things to say about gender expression in the context of a historical type fiction book. There is also magic in this, so there's some realism in here, and I actually really enjoyed how one of the plots with I don't know how to talk about this without spoiling things. I really liked the ending of this book more than I thought I would, and it is a different ending than I feel like we get in a lot of historical fiction nowadays. I don't know that I can tell you much more than that, but I did really enjoy that piece of this book. Yeah, overall, this was not on my radar, but if you liked Cersei, which we will talk about here in a minute, but if you liked Cersei, you should definitely pick this up because it's very similar vibes, in my opinion. Okay, next, we have a book that is one of a couple of 3 books on this list that arguably could have gone to a different genre list, but that I think are best thought of as general fiction rather than the genre they are sold in. This is sold as a romance, and the first 2 books in this series by Helen Hoang are in fact what I would think of as romances. I think this is more general fiction that has a strong romantic element to it, but has, I would argue, equally a family drama element to it. This also features a level of depression and suicidal ideation, so content warnings for those, and the way that that is portrayed, I don't think really fits into genre romance very neatly. So I can definitely see why some people think of this as a romance. For me, if I thought of this as a romance, I would give it probably 2 stars. But when I think of it as just general fiction depicting a woman who is really at a crossroads in her own life, who is dealing with the grief and stress of being a caregiver to a terminally ill parent, and is trying to basically figure out how to kind of reclaim her own agency within her family, who has treated her very badly in the past because of her neurological diversity. When I think of it in that light, and then it also has this strong romantic element kind of thrown in, I think I really like this book. That's why I ended up giving it 4 stars. But as a romance, I don't think it hits the spot for me. So for me, if you go into this thinking of it as just general fiction, really, really good. And I really liked the individual character development in this. I almost wish we had gotten a novella, a prequel novella to this where Anna and Kwan are first getting together. That was truly like a romance. And then if this had been pitched as sort of like a second chance romance where their relationship is being tested by these family dynamics, that might have also worked a little better. Anyway, this sounds really negative considering this is on a best of the year list. This is a really good book and very personal based on the author's note. But yeah, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about its genre, but very positive feelings about it as a book, the writing in it, the actual characters, etc. Then, as promised, let's talk about Cersei. So I finally got to this one. I know it was a big hit, I think in 2018. And also Madeline Miller has been like dominating book talk. So get it, girl, with Song of Achilles, which is I think like 10 years old at this point. So good for her. This is just beautifully written. This is one of those books where it's like, I don't have a lot to say about it because I'm like, what I liked about it was just the writing. I love the writing itself. I love the themes in this. This is definitely like a feminist retelling of the Greek myth of Cersei. And I really liked what the author did with that. But really to me, this is just the star of the show here is the writing. That's what I loved. It was like weirdly page turnery considering that it's like literary historical fiction. I just really admire the craft and skill that went into creating this book. I don't think this emotionally connected with me the way that I know it did for a lot of people, which is why it's not higher on the list for me. But I just admiring it as a book, such a good book and totally see why it's so hyped. Also, I loved this cover on a very superficial level. And then we have another from Daphne du Maurier, and this one is My Cousin Rachel. Now, I will tell you, this I also buddy read with Alan and Leanna, and we all really like this one. I think both Leanna and I would say this is our favorite Daphne du Maurier. I like this better than Rebecca, possibly because I saw the movie Rebecca before I read the book, but whatever. Anyway, I don't know if I would have liked this as much if I hadn't happened to read Dead Blondes and Bad Mothers by Jude Doyle around the same time, because it was about women being vilified and like men's perceptions of women's like danger or monstrosity over time, and particularly manifesting itself in different myths and kind of like cultural archetypes. I don't know if I would have liked this book as much because really to me what's awesome about this book is that Rachel is such an ambiguous character, and it is so, that line is so masterfully walked, especially because our hero, in my opinion, is such a ween. Philip, can't stand that guy, but seeing her through his eyes is fascinating, and I love how ambiguous the ending of this is. This is my favorite Daphne du Maurier, and I love the ideas that this book made me think about. Like, I love the kind of thematic content of this and what it means to read as a woman today versus, you know, potentially her intent or like what it would have read like to a woman at the time. I don't know. I just really love this one, and her writing is so beautiful. I definitely have a couple more from her that I want to read, so maybe she'll be on the list again next year. But it was a very good year of buddy reading Daphne du Maurier with my pals, and just kind of discovering that I do like her beyond just Rebecca. Number 3, and my top 4-star general fiction pick of the year, is My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Braithwaite. Now, this is pitched and sold as a mystery thriller, as like, well, you know, a serial killer book, as is in the title. But I don't really think that this is meaningfully a thriller. And I think if that's what you're wanting from it, you probably won't enjoy it very much. I think as a just family drama between two sisters and what it means to have jealousy between sisters, what abuse in families does to the different members of the family. I really loved all that, and I loved the humor of this. This is very darkly comedic in a way that is not going to work for everyone, but really worked for me. Like, I loved the authorial voice of this. I loved the writing in it. I think that the book probably, I wish it had been either a little shorter or a little longer for me to have put it at like a 4.5 or a 5-star, just because there were certain things that were like, either I wish they'd been more developed or we just hadn't really heard much about them at all, kind of a thing. I don't want to be spoilery because I think that this is a book, it's so short, just like go into it kind of blind, I think, because, you know, there's delights to unfold in this. But I loved the cheeky humor in this that's very darkly comedic, and I love what this has to say about women, feminism. That seems to be a theme on this list. Feminism and then like family stuff seems to be my themes in this particular list, but I definitely felt that way about this one. I loved it. It was really, really good. Then number 2, my 4.5-star pick, and this is one that arguably could have gone onto a romance list because it definitely has strong romantic elements, but I think it's really really more of an intergenerational family drama is The Villa by Nora Roberts. And this is one that has a lot of elements that I like, but it makes it overall kind of hard to classify genre-wise because it definitely has two romances happening. There's one with the granddaughter in this family of wine, like this vineyard owning family. The granddaughter is having a romance, and then the daughter is having a romance. And so it definitely has that, and it also definitely has murder mystery elements to it or suspense elements to it because somebody is killing off people close to the family, probably likely having something to do with their wine business, but they don't totally know what the connections there are. So that definitely, both of those things are happening. So you could think of this as a romantic suspense, but I think what's really cool about this book, what I really liked about this book was the family elements between the different characters. Like I really just loved seeing those intergenerational family dynamics. That was what I really enjoyed about this book. So for that reason, I think of it as general fiction. And it was definitely one of my favorite things I read this year. It just, it's about wine and it felt sort of like a cool glass of rosé on a hot day in Napa. Did that work? This just felt refreshing. I just enjoyed my time in this one and living. I love Nora Roberts. I'm trying to read all of her books right now. I love her writing. This was just an example of what it is that I love about the way she does character development, the way she unfolds her plots, and the way she just immerses you into the daily career lives of her characters. It's unique, I think, to her, and it's something I always enjoy when I get to experience it. And then my number one book on this list, and my only 5-star book on the list, is The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Bronte. Now, I've been putting off reading this for a long time just because of I wanted to make sure I had time to really enjoy it when I read it. And I frankly I feel about the Brontes the way I feel about Jane Austen, which is I want to know that there's still some left that I haven't read. I'm kind of rapidly running out of new titles for both of those kind of groups of authors, but I had not read any Anne yet. And so this year I fixed that and I love this book. This is one of my all-time favorite classics. This surprised me because I knew the setup was that this mysterious woman comes to this village and takes up residence in the titular Wildfell Hall. And I want people to just experience this book, so I don't want to spoil anything, but I had specific thoughts about why she was at that hall and what her backstory was going to be. And I was 100% wrong. And the journey that this book goes to talk about themes from her backstory, I would never have thought would be in a book of this era. I just love this. And knowing what I know about the Brontes family life, I can see where this slots in. I just loved being surprised by that. The narrator of this book is such a ween. This is the second man on this list I've described as a ween, but he is also such a ween. His family is ugh. But I loved that dynamic. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to get, again, it's this is one of those books where I'm I just want people to go in and read it because I didn't know that much about it going in other than vague conceptions about some of the themes I'd heard about it. And I'm glad that I did because I just loved discovering what this book was like. The writing itself is just so easy breezy. I would definitely put this on a list of where to start with classics. If I was going to amend that today, that would be one of the books I would put on there because it's very readable to the modern kind of reading sensibility. So I think it would be very approachable from that perspective. And also I think thematically still incredibly relevant. So yeah. All that to say, favorite general fiction book of the year, definitely my favorite classic I read this year, and all around this is just I feel weird gushing about a classic because it's the reason it stood the test of time is because people saw that this was a good book, but this is a really good book and I definitely commend it to people. So those were my favorite general fiction picks for 2021. Definitely let me know what you thought about any of the books that I talked about, what your favorite sort of general fiction, literary fiction, historical, classics, whatever. Let me know that in the comments below. And yeah, I think that will do it for this video. So if you enjoyed it, please subscribe, follow me on the social medias if you are so inclined. I have all that information listed in the description box below, and I think that will do it. I hope you're having an absolutely lovely day today, and I will just talk to you soon. Bye!